Something is quietly unfolding around the Philadelphia Eagles as the draft approaches, and if you've been paying close attention to the signals coming out of the organization, you can start to see a very deliberate pattern forming. This isn't just about filling holes on a roster. This is about calculated planning, anticipating future problems before they even fully surface, and positioning the team to stay competitive not just this year, but for seasons ahead. Right now, the conversation around the Eagles' biggest needs is starting to take shape, and there's a clear consensus forming in certain areas. Edge rusher, offensive line, and tight end are at the center of it all, but when you dig deeper, you realize the situation is more complex than just a simple list of needs. This roster has talent, no question, but there are underlying concerns that could define how successful this team really is in 2026. Let's start with the trenches, because that's always where this organization builds from. The offensive line has been a cornerstone of the Eagles' identity for years, but there are warning signs. Injuries played a major role last season, and several key players dealt with inconsistency or missed time. When you look ahead, the uncertainty grows even more. There are legitimate questions about durability, and even the possibility of retirement for key veterans. That's not something you can ignore or push down the road. If anything, it demands immediate attention early in the draft. And if you think about how this front office operates, it makes perfect sense. This is a team that values foresight. They don't like being reactive. They want to be proactive. That's why investing in the offensive line early wouldn't just be smart. It would be completely aligned with how they've built success in the past. Now flip over to the defensive side, specifically the edge rusher position, and things get even more interesting. On paper, there are pieces in place. Nolan Smith and Jalen Hurts are solid starters, and Arnold Ebiketie adds depth with real upside. He's not just a rotational player. He's shown flashes of being disruptive with strong pass rush metrics and the ability to impact the game in multiple ways. His athleticism and production suggest he can be more than just a depth piece. But here's the reality. Beyond those names, the depth is thin, and in today's NFL, you can never have enough pass rushers. That's why there's a strong belief that the Eagles aren't done addressing this position. There's still room, and arguably a need, for another impact player off the edge. Whether that comes through the draft or another move, it feels like something that's still very much on the table. Then there's the tight end situation, and this is where things get really intriguing. On the surface, it might not look like a major issue. The team has brought in multiple players at the position, and Dallas Goedert remains a productive and reliable presence. But when you zoom out and think long term, the picture changes. For the past couple of off seasons, there's been uncertainty surrounding Goedert's future. Contract discussions, cap management, and roster flexibility have all played a role in that. And while keeping him at his current value is a win, it doesn't solve the long-term question. The Eagles haven't invested an early draft pick in a tight end since Goedert himself, and that lack of forward planning is starting to show. That's why the idea of targeting a young, athletic tight end in this draft makes so much sense. Not just any tight end, but someone who can evolve with the offense. Someone who brings explosiveness, versatility, and the ability to stretch the field. The modern tight end isn't just a blocker anymore. He's a weapon, and if the Eagles want to keep their offense dynamic, they need to start thinking about who that next guy is going to be. There's also a broader philosophical shift that seems to be happening. After years of investing heavily on defense, the Eagles may be preparing to flip that approach. With several defensive players eventually due for big contracts, the focus could shift toward building affordable, high-upside talent on offense through the draft. It's a strategy rooted in sustainability, balancing star power with cost-controlled contributors. And when you connect all these dots, you start to see the bigger picture. This isn't a team scrambling to fix problems. This is a front office trying to stay ahead of them. Every move, every rumor, every potential draft target fits into a larger plan. But here's the question that really matters, and it's one that only the fans can truly answer right now. If you had to choose, what should be the Eagles' top priority in this draft? Protecting the future of the offensive line, reinforcing the pass rush, or finally securing the next long-term answer at tight end? And that's where things start to get even more layered, because the answer to that question might actually define the identity of this team moving forward. If the Eagles choose to prioritize the offensive line early, it tells you everything about how they view their window, that protecting the quarterback and reestablishing dominance in the trenches is still the foundation of everything they want to do. And honestly, there's a strong argument for that approach when you consider how much the health and performance of that unit impacted the team last season. There were stretches where the offensive line simply didn't look like the same dominant group we've come to expect. Injuries piled up, key players struggled to stay consistent, and suddenly the entire offense felt it. The run game wasn't as explosive, the protection broke down at times, and it became clear just how thin the margin for error really is when that group isn't at full strength. If this front office believes that was more than just a one-year issue, then investing early in that unit isn't just smart, it's necessary. But then again, you can't ignore what's happening on the edge. This league is driven by quarterbacks, and the only way to consistently compete is by disrupting them. While Nolan Smith and Jalen Hurts give you a solid foundation, and Arnold Ebiketie brings intriguing upside, there's still a sense that this group is missing that true difference maker, that player who can take over games in critical moments. And knowing how this organization values pass rush, it wouldn't be surprising at all if they take a swing on a high upside prospect who fits their mold. There are already names being discussed internally and externally, players who bring a mix of length, explosiveness, and physicality, the exact traits this team covets. Some of these prospects could come off the board early, others might be available later, but the key here is that the Eagles have options, and when you have options, you have flexibility. That's where this front office thrives. Now circle back to the tight end position, because this might quietly be the most strategic decision of them all. Dallas Goedert gives you production right now, no doubt about it, but the way the Eagles have had to manage his situation over the past couple of years, adjusting contracts, navigating uncertainty, it's a reminder that this position hasn't been fully secured for the future, and this is where a prospect like Eli Stowers becomes incredibly interesting. You're talking about a player with elite athletic traits, explosive, dynamic, and capable of adding a completely different dimension to the offense. His production over the last 2 seasons shows he can be a reliable target, and his physical tools suggest there's still room for growth. He's not the traditional dominant inline blocker, but he's shown enough ability to hold his own, and more importantly, he fits the modern mold of what offenses are looking for. Imagine adding that kind of player into this system. Someone who can stretch the field, create mismatches, and evolve alongside the offense. That's not just a depth move, that's a long-term investment in keeping this offense unpredictable and dangerous. And this all ties back to something that often separates good teams from great ones: timing, knowing when to invest in a position before it becomes a glaring weakness. The Eagles have done this well in many areas, but tight end might be the one spot where they've been playing catch-up instead of staying ahead. At the same time, there's another layer to all of this that fans can't ignore: the uncertainty surrounding key pieces of the offense. Because if anything unexpected happens, if any major move shakes up the roster, the priorities could shift instantly. That's why this front office is always thinking in contingencies, always preparing for multiple scenarios, even the ones fans don't want to think about. And that's what makes this draft so fascinating. It's not just about who they pick, it's about what those picks say. Every decision will give us a clearer picture of how they view this roster, this window, and the future of the franchise. Because at the end of the day, this isn't random. This isn't guesswork. This is a calculated plan being executed step by step, with every move connected to something bigger. Because once you really sit with that question, you start to realize this isn't just about one pick or one position. It's about trust in a philosophy that has defined this organization for years. The Eagles don't operate like most teams. They don't chase headlines. They don't panic. They build with intention, and more importantly, they build with patience. Think about how many times this front office has made a move that didn't immediately make sense to everyone on the outside, only for it to pay off later. That's the pattern. And right now, everything we're seeing suggests they're setting up for another one of those moments. If they go offensive line early, it might not excite everyone right away, but it could be the move that stabilizes this team for the next 5 years. If they go edge rusher, it signals they're not satisfied with being good enough when it comes to pressuring the quarterback. They want dominance. And if they go tight end, it tells you they're already thinking about what this offense needs to look like 2 or 3 seasons from now, not just this year. And here's where it gets even more interesting. They don't have to choose just one direction. That's the advantage of having multiple picks and a front office that knows how to maneuver the board. There's a real possibility that they address more than one of these needs early, especially if the value lines up. And if that happens, you're not just talking about filling gaps. You're talking about reshaping the roster in a way that could elevate this team immediately while also securing its future. But of course, with every opportunity comes risk. Drafting for the future is smart, but it can also leave you exposed in the present if you're not careful, and that's the balance they have to strike, because this is still a team with expectations. This isn't a rebuild, this is a roster that believes it can compete, and every decision has to reflect that urgency. At the same time, you can feel that there's a bigger picture in play here. The way they're thinking about contracts, the way they're evaluating talent, the way they're positioning themselves, it all points to a front office that's trying to stay one step ahead of the league. And if they pull this off the way they envision, it's not just about staying competitive, it's about sustaining success. So now, as everything builds toward draft night, all eyes are on what they do first, because that first move is going to tell us a lot. It's going to reveal priorities, strategy, and maybe even a few surprises. And even beyond that first wave of decisions, what really separates this situation from others around the league is how interconnected everything is right now. This isn't just about plugging holes. It's about timing contracts, anticipating departures, and understanding exactly when to reload at each position without losing momentum as a contender. Take a step back and look at the defensive side again. There are key players who are going to command major money sooner rather than later. That reality forces tough decisions. You simply can't pay everyone, and when those moments come, the only way to stay competitive is by having young, affordable talent ready to step in. That's where this draft becomes critical. It's not just about adding depth, it's about identifying future starters before the need becomes urgent. And that's why the idea of shifting focus toward offense early makes so much sense. If you can lock in cost-controlled talent on that side of the ball, it gives you the flexibility to handle those defensive contracts when the time comes. It's a balancing act, and right now it feels like the Eagles are right in the middle of recalibrating that balance. But let's not ignore something else that's quietly hovering over all of this: uncertainty. Not chaos, not instability, but calculated awareness that things can change quickly in this league. Whether it's performance dips, injuries, or unexpected roster moves, the front office is clearly preparing for multiple outcomes. And that's why you're seeing them evaluate positions like wide receiver in a different light, even if it's not being openly emphasized. Because if something shifts there, if a major piece is no longer part of the long-term picture, that instantly reshapes the entire draft strategy. And the Eagles, more than most teams, understand the importance of being ready for that kind of pivot. Now, bring it back to the fans for a second, because this is where the tension really builds. You're looking at a team that still has the talent to compete, but also has just enough question marks to make this offseason feel pivotal. Every pick, every decision, every move carries weight, and you can feel that urgency mixed with patience. That belief that they're close, but also the understanding that staying close isn't enough. And that's why this draft isn't just another step in the process. It's a statement. It's a chance to reinforce what this team stands for: physicality, smart roster building, and long-term vision, while also addressing the very real concerns that showed up last season. So when that moment comes, when the Eagles are officially on the clock, it's not just about the name that gets called. It's about what that name represents. Is it protection for the future? Is it pressure on opposing quarterbacks? Is it a new weapon for the offense? Or is it something unexpected that only this front office saw coming? Because if there's one thing we